Good evening and welcome to the Horsham District Council Planning Committee North meeting. Just a couple of points to start with. The fire exits are in the corner. There's no scheduled drill tonight, so if it goes off, we'll leave calmly and head down to the bandstand in the Carfax. Please, phones to silent or off. Members, please remember to turn your mics on and off. The meeting is live streamed. And just to remind you, this is not a public meeting. It's a meeting held in public. We have registered speakers who will have allotted times to speak. Other than that, please, we would ask that you do not talk or interject. Thank you very much. Can the officers please introduce themselves?
Good evening, Jason Hawkes, Principal Planning Officer.
Nick Pettifer, Senior Planning Officer.
Emma Parks, the Head of Development and Building Control.
Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
And Liz Fennick, Democratic Services Officer, and Melissa Stallard, Democratic Services Officer.
Great, thanks. Item 1, apologies, please.
Thank you. Apologies have been received from Anthony Frankland, Kasia Greenwood, Liz Kitchen, David Skip, Clive Trott. Thank you. And Councillor Colin Minto.
Thank you very much. Item 2, minutes from the previous meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to have a look at those? Would anybody like to raise anything from them?
Sorry, Liz Kitchen is not.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Tricia.
That's okay. So in that case, we'll please agree that the minutes are as written.
Agree.
Thank you very much. Declarations of members' interest, item 3.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest in item 6, the Copsworthing Road, Horsham. I'm a member of Southwater Parish Council, but I don't sit on their planning committee. It's a personal interest, not prejudicial. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Anybody else? No. Thank you. I have no announcements this evening.
Sorry, I ought to be declaring an interest as a member of Den Neighbourhood Council in respect of, I think it's item 7, isn't it? Again, I'm not on the planning committee.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Item 5, appeals. Anybody would like to comment on the appeals as written? No, very good. Okay, let's move on then, please, to item 6. DC 240622, the COPS, and we'll have a presentation from the office, please.
Thank you. Since the publication of the report, we've had 4 more letters from neighbours or local residents, 3 of which are objections and 1 of which has been registered as a support. So the objections cite unsuitable proposal, increased traffic generated, access and needs of residents to local amenities, shops, doctors, etc. It's unsuitable. And existing pressure being added to the local facilities over the last 2 to 3 years by other building works in Southwater. The support cites opportunities for improvements to the bus stop and providing a safe crossing point. By way of an update from the BNG officer, the additional details have satisfied all the comments that were raised as part of the report. So just by way of an update, all the BNG details are satisfactory. So the application site comprises land associated to a residential dwelling that is situated at the northern end of Southwater and lies on the western side of Worthing Road. The former dwelling has been vacant and in a state of dereliction for many years. The site includes a protected tree belt along the north of the site, which is also a drainage ditch corridor, and lies partly in the built-up area of Southwater, which you can see on the map by way of the blue line. The current site is occupied by a single dwelling and a garage structure, which are typical of the interwar style, and is served by a vehicular access point off Worthing Road, which at that point is subject to a 40 miles per hour speed limit. Site photos taken from Worthing Road show the boundary vegetation along the front. And from within the site, you can see the sloping nature of the ground levels, which slopes down towards the west, which is the rear boundary of the site. The ditch and the tree lines create quite a confined site. Residential boundaries are noted along the southern side. The proposal seeks full planning permission for a 70-bed care home over 3 levels, with staff and visitor parking, landscaped grounds and attenuation pond integrated into the landscape. The small building, which the cursor is just pointing to here, is associated with the water abstraction pump and filtration unit. Vehicular access would come off an improved existing access point along Worthing Road and is capable of achieving satisfactory visibility displays for the envisaged use, and as agreed with the local highways authority. The 33 parking spaces are split between 2 parking courts, one at the front and one at the rear of the site. All rooms within the care home will be en suite, with many rooms having access to either a balcony, terrace or a Juliet balcony. There are various staff rooms and facilities located in the basement level, a semi-basement level at the rear of the block, which uses the site's natural ground levels, and communal facilities for residents, including a mobility scooter storage space, which is split across the remaining 3 levels. Externally, the elevations will pick up on traditional features such as dormers within the roof space and gable ends, but with a contemporary design. The elevations also show how the natural ground levels will be picked up by way of the stepped building heights. The proposal looks to deliver new tree planting in accordance with the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan within the site, with 106 new trees proposed on site. The site would also deliver the required 10% BNG requirement within the site. Trees are to be retained around the site's boundary and reinforced with new understory planting and gapping up. Only 2 trees are set to be removed as part of the current proposal on the verge to the northeast of the site, so within the highway verge, and there's an additional holly tree within the site to be removed. Finally, these 2 CGI slides show how the care home is envisaged to look once complete. So the first one is shown from the Worthing Road side, and then the second one is shown from the rear of the site. The site is currently located to the north of the Southwater built-up area. As you can see here, the tiny purple little sliver of land at the top here. And shown here in the context of the emerging Horsham District local plan, master plan for Southwater, which is shown for context, although we acknowledge it's not been adopted at this stage. So officers recognise that some 77% of their site lies outside of the defined built-up area boundary of Southwater, and that the site has not been allocated for development in a made local plan or neighbourhood plan. Local Plan Policy HDPF 18 doesn't restrict new care accommodation to locations within defined settlement boundaries, but as Neighbourhood Plan Policy SNP 11 is more recent and directs specialist care accommodation to within the defined built-up area, this policy takes precedence in the decision-making process, thus raising a technical conflict with both local and neighbourhood plan policies. In acknowledging this policy conflict, and that the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply position, the proposal has been considered against the tilted balance set out under paragraph 11D, lim 2 of the NPPF, specifically to grant permission unless any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the NPPF as a whole. Therefore, as set out in the report, there are a number of material benefits resulting from the proposed development, including the provision of a 70-bed space purpose-built specialist care accommodation envisaged as dementia care, which will provide a significant contribution towards meeting the care needs of residents in the district, allowing families and residents to remain close and connected with existing communities. Calculation that the proposed 70-bed care home would lead to the provision of 38 dwellings under the government's housing delivery test, thus making a significant contribution towards the council's housing land supply shortfall. Provision of employment opportunities within the district, accessible by public transport with bus routes stopping close to the site along Worthing Road, acknowledging access will primarily be by residents and staff given the nature of the care home. The site being contiguous with the built-up edge of Southwater and contained within a defensible boundary, thus not appearing to encroach into the wider open countryside. Given the location of the site at the northern edge of the village, there will be no resulting development creep beyond the site and no settlement coalescence. The proposal also accords with the FAD, facilitating appropriate development document, and the 5 criteria therein. Limited landscape harm would occur as the site is so contained within defined vegetated and defensible boundaries. There's redevelopment of a derelict site at the entrance to Southwater, allowing opportunities for visual enhancements of the site and creating a gateway building to Southwater. The ability to provide on-site biodiversity net gain, achieving a water-neutral development by way of an on-site borehole, enabling safe access to the site and accordance with other development plan policies. There's sufficient parking accommodation on site for the development in line with a site-specific assessment as required and assessed by the local highways authority. And there's an opportunity for improvements to the site access and pedestrian crossing point at Worthing Road to provide a safer crossing point at the splitter island to the roundabout, conditioned to ensure highways authority are satisfied with the design. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move to speakers. There's quite a lot of speakers tonight, so please bear in mind you will be held to time. First up is Tessa Starmer, please.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in support of the planning application for the COPs. My name is Tessa Starmer, the applicant and owner of Starbuild Limited. The site has been derelict now for the past 10 years and an unsightly approach to the northern end of Southwater Village. Our proposal will make efficient use of this previously developed land by removing an unattractive, derelict building and replacing them with new modern care home facilities to meet the identified and growing need for the demand for such facilities, both locally and district-wide. The proposal has been well considered throughout, with extensive engagement and discussions with the council and care home providers to inform the design. We've taken on board the feedback from our previous applications and from consultees such as Environmental Health, Highways, Landscape and Natural England. We believe that the site is very sympathetic to its location and surroundings. It's well contained, unobtrusive, with good screening from the existing trees and hedging, and the sloping topography further adds to its concealment. The need for modern, pleasant and comprehensive care facilities such as this dementia care proposed within the district are both undeniable and quantifiable as the ageing population is increasing rapidly, as is well chronicled nationally and locally. Our scheme represents a modern and sympathetic approach to this type of specialist care and would be a great asset to the whole area and Southwater in particular. We feel that the planning officers have considered the proposal very carefully and have concluded on balance the benefits afforded outweigh any perceived negative impact of the scheme. We suggest that this relatively modest scheme, which can be built out quickly, represents a win-win situation for Southwater. Firstly, it promotes a flagship approach to care for the elderly, and secondly, it tidies up the unsightly approach to the village while satisfying a real and quantifiable need. We respectfully request the committee accept your officers' recommendations and approve this application.
Thank you, Tessa. John Starmer, please.
Good evening. My name is John Starmer, and I'm a director of Starbuild, the applicants. Over the past 3 years, and working very closely with the planning department, we have all devoted an enormous amount of time, effort and energy to produce this proposal for a specialist needs care home for the elderly. With their advice, input and guidance, we have been able to satisfy every requirement. Specialist care refers to the highly dependent elderly. I have lived in Horsham area for the past 60 years, and within the last 4 years, I had the unenviable task of finding specialist care for my father. Not all, but many of the facilities visited were old, in urgent need of modernisation, and quite frankly, they were thoroughly depressing. This not need be the case. We all know that people are living longer, but not always in perfect health. The demand for high dependency care is growing enormously, and modern, well-conceived, light and airy conditions in pleasant surroundings should be a given for elderly care. Through this scheme, we firmly believe that we have produced a proposal that is up-to-date, low-key, unobtrusive, and will satisfy what is becoming an urgent need. As a company, we are fully committed to delivering this proposal and are already in negotiations with a very reputable care provider and have been reassured that the scheme is quickly deliverable. In fact, we have had innumerable approaches from operators, which has reinforced our belief in the need for this type of specialist care in the locality. The site itself is derelict with unsightly buildings, is well contained, and although a large portion sits just outside the curtilage, it does mark a clear and defined end to the built-up area of this end of the village. Given that there are no planning issues as to why this proposal should not proceed, we respectfully request that the committee members concur with their planners and conclude that, on balance, the benefits of such a low-key scheme outweigh any detrimental impact it may have on its immediate local community.
Thanks, John. Dr. Chris Lyons, please.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Chris Lyons and I'm the Head of UK Planning for SLR Consulting, and we're advising Starbuild Limited on this proposal. This application is for the construction of a 70-bed care home with on-site facilities for residents. Specialist nursing care will be available 24/7 with facilities for residents including medical support, beauty treatments, cafe, cinema room, dining room, library and landscape gardens all proposed. There's a considerable need for older persons care within the district, and this is projected to grow, meaning there's an increasing demand for facilities such as this. There's also demand for new high-quality buildings, as many existing facilities are dated and will need to be replaced. Given the nature of the building and the amenities being provided on site, there will be less requirement for some residents to travel outside the site. But as it is located at Southwater, one of the key settlements in the districts, this is a perfect location with good access to facilities. Part of the site is located within the defined built-up area of Southwater, but looking at the site, it's clear that Worthing Road is the natural boundary to Southwater from the north and provides a clear defensible boundary from further growth in that direction. The building is attractively designed, set back from the road, with a good amount of existing mature landscaping which will reduce views of the buildings. Visualisation showed it would be an attractive building in the street scene, and it's noted the consultees are generally happy with the proposals and where conditions or Section 106 can resolve the remaining points. The scheme also considerably exceeds the requirements for biodiversity net gain and has a water neutrality solution. Taking into account Horsham's current per 5-year housing position, the presumption in favour of development therefore applies. The Council's FAD document, as you've heard, gives guidance on the location of the development, and given the failure to meet housing requirements, this scheme meets the requirements within the FAD. We believe the benefits of a purpose-built, sustainably located care facility on a site that is partly previously developed should be supported, as it will improve the look of the site and there is no significant harm existing. On this basis, the Council is asked to grant permission for this application. Thank you.
Councillor Alex Jeffrey, now you've got 5 minutes, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair. I have requested to speak on this application, as despite not being in my ward of Southwater South and Shipley, this application does have an impact on some of the residents in Southwater South that I represent. For those who are not familiar with Southwater, the Copse lies at the most northerly point of Southwater, with the entrance to the proposed site being situated on a busy roundabout connecting the village to the nearby Hoppost roundabout, as well as servicing commercial traffic to the nearby Oakhurst Business Park. I wish to make it clear that whilst I'm not against the provision of a care home in Southwater, a facility with the potential to bring benefits to the village, I'm not convinced that the proposed site is geographically appropriate for a development of this nature. My concern centres around the distance from the proposed site to the nearby amenities in Lintott Square. According to Google Maps, the proposed site would be over 1.5 miles from local amenities, which would take the average able-bodied person approximately 25 minutes to walk into the centre of the village. Considering the typical age demographic this proposed development would entertain, I fail to see how the proposal conforms to Policy 18 of the Horsham District Planning Framework, which supports such specialist care provisions where it is accessible by foot or public transport to local shops, services, community facilities and the wider public transport network. There is a bus stop situated to the south of the site on the opposite side of the road to where the proposed development would sit. However, I challenge the viability of this, considering the age demographics this proposal would accommodate. This would result in elderly residents from a care home, which is proposed will specialise in dementia care, having to cross a high volume section of highway in which many motorists exceed the designated speed limit in order to reach the nearest public transport link to take them into the centre of the village. I note from the comments made by Highways that the applicant has proposed the potential provision of a 2-stage crossing to the north of the proposed site using a splitter island at the roundabout that would be deemed acceptable. I challenge this notion. With the volume of traffic that uses this roundabout coupled with the speed of the vehicles as they enter and exit this section, a crossing here would be dangerous for the able-bodied to attempt, never mind those who may be less mobile as a result of age and other debilitating factors. Whilst this may be deemed acceptable in planning terms, I take the view that such a proposal would be a tragedy waiting to happen. The other caveat to this application is the fact that the majority of the proposed development would fall outside of the built-up area boundary and fall within the strategic gap between Southwater and Christ's Hospital, with only 23% of the development falling within the designated built-up area boundary. There is a concern for both myself and residents I've spoken to about this who are asking themselves, where will it end for Southwater? If members approve this application this evening, Southwater will have development pushing out above the confines of the built-up area boundary on both its northern and southern borders, expanding the village past what is considered to be its ultimate boundary. Further questions arise in the form of the true motivations behind this application, with 4 previous applications for residential housing refused previously, dating back to 2015, with the latest application in January of this year being withdrawn by the applicant. My concern with this application is whether the provision of a care home only at this time is to be used by the applicant as a Phoenix application, in which an application for residential housing may be made later down the line after the extension of the built-up area boundary, or if a registered care provider will not agree or cannot be found to manage the proposed care home. There are concerns within the local community that a change of use could potentially be applied for to convert the completed building into flats, therefore fulfilling the applicant's original intentions. To my knowledge, a suitable provider has yet to agree to take on the site, and at this location, should this committee be minded to approve this application here tonight. If this application does gain approval, I would be interested to know what reassurances could be given in the form of conditions to ensure that this is not purely a cunning attempt of circumnavigating the planning system to reach the original desired outcome of residential housing in some form or another. Call me cynical. Looking through the conditions proposed currently in the committee report, I failed to identify any suitable conditions that would provide reassurance against such a ploy, something I'm hopeful members will take into consideration when making a decision this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jeffrey. And finally on this item, from Southwater Parish Council, Councillor Jeff Villis, please. Good evening, Chairman, members of the committee. Councillor Jeff Villis, I'm the Vice Chairman of Planning, and I'm here to represent Southwater Parish Council. We urge the committee to seriously consider the significant issues this proposal raises and to refuse this application based on its non-compliance with essential policies. Firstly, proposed site lies outside the established built-up area boundary, which is in direct contravention of planning policies intended to protect our rural landscape, maintain sustainable development and prevent the urban sprawl. The neighbourhood plan examination hearing in which the site was put forward by the owners concluded with the planning inspector rejecting it for development on various grounds. These boundaries and planning policies are vital for preserving the character and identity of Southwater, preventing unsustainable development and ensuring that growth aligns with the needs and wishes of our community. A crucial and glaring non-compliance in this application is with the policy SMP 18, which mandates specific tree planting requirements. The policy requires any trees lost are replaced with additional new trees based on the development's footprint. The original application, given the scale of this project, the additional 106 trees are required. Yet the original project, it was woefully short of that. And I noticed tonight that they said that they will do the 106 trees, but we must ensure that is it if you deem it that you're going to pass this. This was enforced on other developments within this local planning authority. DC 22-2077, Wilberforce Way RSPCA site, it was enforced. Till the applicant demonstrates clearer compliance with SMP 18, we strongly believe this application should not be approved. If you do, however, are inclined to approve, we must require full compliance with this tree planting policy, as you've done with previous applications. Beyond the policy, the actions of the site owner have already caused considerable upset within our community. Around 100 trees providing vital environment value were decimated and removed on the site. An air raid shelter recognised as a heritage asset and due to be listed was actually destroyed and removed prior to listing. These actions have heightened local concern and distrust towards any proposals for this site. The suitability of this location for a care home is also highly questionable. The site's remote position places it over 30 minutes walk from necessary amenities and especially unsuitable for elderly residents, many have limited mobility, contrary to policy SMP 11, which mandates accessibility and integration for specialist accommodations. In addition, there is no established need for a new care home here. Sussex already faces issues with existing care homes struggling to reach capacity and meet their operational costs. This raises serious doubts about the viability of the project. We're concerned that the developer intends to use this application as a precursor to develop the rear of the site without genuine commitment to deliver the care home. Southwater Parish Council therefore requests that, should the committee consider approval, it requires a comprehensive planning application covering the entire site and demonstration of deliverability. Traffic safety concerns arise from this proposal. The access point is alarmingly close to Blake's Farm Road roundabout, posing a high risk for both vehicles and pedestrians. Moreover, the proposed pedestrian crossing is dangerously positioned, particularly for elderly residents who made additional time to cross. These issues violate both Policy 40 of the Horsham District Policy Framework and Policy SMP 4, which require full safe access for all. In conclusion, this proposal is fundamentally misaligned with both the Horsham District Planning Framework, Southwater Neighbourhood Plan.
The application poses unacceptable risk to safety, fails to demonstrate accessibility for residents, lacks a robust plan for fulfilling the tree planting obligations that are essential for mitigating the environmental harm it will cause, and we urge the committee to refuse this application. However, if you consider to approve it, you must enforce strict compliance with the tree planting policy SMP 18 to safeguard Southwater's environmental interests. And please note, Southwater Parish Council is prepared to consider initiating a judicial review should the local planning authority approve this application in its current form. We stand ready to ensure that developing in our area aligns with the principles of sustainable growth, community interest and policy compliance. I thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, I suggest we come back to the officers to see if they have any answers to any questions.
Thank you. So just to clarify the point of the site having been excluded from the neighbourhood plan, the site assessment was purely for residential and not for a care home. So that's a different context and different planning considerations. The application before us is for a care home. If there was any alternative proposals on this site for reuse of the site or for changing the use of the building, then that would be subject to another planning application. And obviously at that point, the relevant planning policies will be taken into account. So the application has been assessed on the basis of being a care home for special needs. And therefore the considerations relate to those policies. So all those relevant policies have been drawn into consideration and have led to the conclusion that officers are recommending approval for the application. It's also the nature of the site as a care home for dementia patients, which addresses the distance from Lintott Square and services, because the nature of the likely residents would be very unlikely to travel independently to local facilities, and there's a lot of facilities being provided on site. So officers recognise this and have addressed the potential for staff and visitors to access the site by way of public transport. And the bus service is a reasonably regular service. It's not as if it's a 2 buses a day. It's a reasonably regular service serving Horsham and other villages in the district as well. There's no strategic gap identified between Horsham and Christ Hospital. So if I just refer to the neighbourhood plan, you can see Southwater is within this red line here. The application site is this purple block at the top. I'm not sure if
Members see that because the cursor isn't working.
it's not, is it?
The site is up here in purple.
So the Christ Hospital area is pretty much where that blue block is. So it doesn't fall within a strategic gap. And because of the nature of the site being quite contained within a defensible boundary, officers therefore don't feel that it would create development creep or adverse impact on the sort of wider landscape setting. So it's quite well contained and well screened, taking account the additional screening and planting that is being proposed as part of the development as well. I'll just refer back to the site plan here. So you can see the red circles indicate existing trees along this northern boundary, which is the drainage ditch, and there's additional trees planted within the site as well. So the distance from the local amenities, we've obviously acknowledged that as part of the report, but we don't feel that that's particularly relevant in this instance, given the nature of the proposal. Thank you.
Just to pick up on one point, just in terms of Councillor Jeffrey's comments around restricting future applications via conditions on this one, as my colleague said, that you have to consider the proposal before you, not an alternative. This is the proposal before you, and it is the red edge of this application site, which is the proposal before you here, and not any other land that the applicant may own. We are considering the proposal within the edge of the application site. It's not possible through a specific proposal to restrict any future use of the land. The applicant can apply if they wish. We may, or we don't know what the outcome is because we're not deciding that today. But the conditions imposed are required to make this development acceptable, and there are an extensive list of conditions which officers are considered are necessary. Thank you.
I'd just like to question whether we can accept members of the public, albeit members of a parish council, making legal threats to this committee. I don't think that's acceptable.
Perhaps it would help to outline what judicial review is for. It's an opportunity for the court to have a look at the decision-making process and whether that is lawful. So whether we've considered the right things when we arrive at our decision as a council. What it is not is an opportunity for a judge to have another go based on the facts and arrive at a different decision. It is about decision-making process. I have every faith that the things that you need to consider are contained in the officer report, and that if we consider those with due diligence, then we're in the best position to defend a judicial review claim robustly and have done so in the recent past.
Thanks very much. Okay, well, I'm obviously a ward councillor here. I will probably speak at the end if I have anything to say at all. But Councillor Vickers, I'm sure you would like to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would. I'd like to start by thanking the officer for the very full report and her presentation. It was very clear that she explained that the site is 3/4 outside the built-up area boundary of Southwater. Less than a third of it is within the built-up area, which is where the existing derelict house is. That is a very small house in comparison to what is proposed on this site, which is a very significant, large building, 3 stories high, with access onto a very busy roundabout. I have some concerns about overriding our policies on building outside built-up area boundaries. I hear what the officer has said, that a care home is an exceptional case if there's a need. Are we sure there's actually a need for another 70-bed care home? We've actually approved several others across the district in recent months, years, which have yet to be built. And my personal experience of visiting a number of care homes over the last few years is that there is significant capacity at the moment in most of the care homes, including for dementia patients. Is this proposal solely for dementia care? Because I cannot believe that a care home for 70 dementia patients all in one home would be appropriate. Most care homes have nursing care for other things as well as people with dementia, and they have it in sections. So I'm surprised it is proposed as a solely dementia unit. I've also got some concerns about 3-storey development in this location, which is not exactly in keeping with the countryside, which is where it is. It is the northernmost part of Southwater. The proposal for the local plan comes some significant way north of the existing building built-up area. And I'm surprised that officers consider that the benefits of this proposal outweigh the harm of going against policy. Can you just confirm, please, that that is what you are saying, that the benefits of providing a 70-bed dementia care home outweighs the policy objections of policies 4 and 26 of the HDPF? I would like that clarified, please.
Yes, that is what we're saying is a significant need, and the contribution towards our housing supply figures would outweigh any identified harm.
Chairman, can I come back? Can I ask how the need for dementia provision is actually calculated and what the evidence is that has been provided, please?
Thank you. We've got a strategic housing market assessment. The latest one was 2019, which identifies there will be a likely shortfall in older persons' care bed space provision within the district of some 1,517 spaces by 2039. Sorry, reading it. So there is an identified shortfall in bed spaces. The applicant has also included a snapshot of the current market for elderly care provision in the district, when it's actually within a 10-kilometre catchment area. Noting that many of the existing care home facilities are below the current expectations for ensuite or wet rooms, below space standards, and many originate before the year 2000 and are often conversions of existing buildings. So this one would be purpose-built with facilities set out and planned for at the outset, rather than being subject to a conversion of an existing building. So there is an identified need for this type of facility.
Sorry, did you say older person care space requirement, not dementia care space requirement?
I don't think the strategic housing market assessment separates the two. It's referred to as older persons care bed space provision within the district, so I guess that encompasses all different types of need.
I might want to come back again at the end, is that okay? Thank you.
Alrighty, anybody else? Councillor Mess.
Sorry, Chairman, I think because it's so critical to this particular case and the apparent reasons why there's a recommendation for approval, could the officers please, and I've got two questions, could the officers please remind us why it is that Horsham District Council does not have an identified 5-year housing supply, and what that means in terms of the phrase, the tilted balance in favour of development?
It's a mixture of past delivery, which has been impacted by water neutrality, and the fact that we don't have an adopted up-to-date local plan. It's a combination of factors, but where we find ourselves in the tilted balance.
So if I could ask my second question. So if we did have an adopted local plan which identified that housing supply, would this proposal still be recommended for approval?
So the answer to that is yes, it would be recommended for approval, because the draft or emerging local plan contains a policy for this type of care provision, and that would supersede the policy in the Southwater neighbourhood plan. So it will become the most relevant application, and it does refer to provision of these types of care homes outside the built-up area.
Thank you.
Oh, that's pretty clear. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. Yet again, we've got an application for a development in Southwater, which is extremely popular. And we do want our residents to feel supported by our planning. And what strikes me from the officer report in this case are a number of things which I think are extremely important. The first is that the site does not fall within the built-up area boundary. It's not allocated for development either, and it's not considered essential. Okay, it's for a care home and not homes, not houses. However, if we were to have a wider strategic plan for delivering care homes for our residents in our district, surely that would already have been noted and have been planned for in the local plan, which is at Regulation 19. Therefore, I don't really buy it, actually, that it is essential, that it is necessary in that spot right now. And something Councillor Vickers mentioned, which is that where you explained about the strategic housing market assessment from 2019, and that there are 1,517 spaces that are needed by 2039. And Councillor Vickers has already pointed out that a number of care homes have had their applications approved. So I'm not really hearing how many we need, by when, and why they're necessary there. But I have noted that it's falling outside of the built-up area boundary, and I really don't feel we can have that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Yes.
Just want to be clear, councillors, and it's noted in paragraph 6.2 of the officer's report, where it mentions the strategic housing market assessment and the 1,517 spaces needed by 2039. Obviously, that document would then inform our emerging local plan, which has a policy that allows care homes outside of built-up area boundaries. So we have to acknowledge that has limited weight right now, but I think, Councillor Blackburn, that assessment did happen as part of the local plan review process, and obviously that document and that need then informed our new policy, which we are seeking to adopt. And obviously we are in this transition stage where that carries limited weight and the Southwater policy carries more weight, but you can see the transition there and the way we are travelling forward with our policy context there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Utan.
Excuse me, yes, thank you, Chairman. Can I just point out that I live in a rural, or I represent a rural area, and we have sitting vacant with planning permission for 2 care homes, which have shown absolutely no sign of being developed. I, like Councillor Blackburn and Councillor Vickers, query the desperate need for an all-dementia 70-bed care home. I just don't see it, I'm afraid. I think we've got more than enough capacity at the moment. We've got a number of care homes in the Horsham area, and the 2 that are in my ward are really quite substantial. So I don't see the need for this.
Thank you, Councillor Utan.
Councillor Fletcher.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. It's an unusual case, this one, in that we've got a brownfield site. It's a derelict site. The derelict building is actually within the built-up area boundary, which has been drawn unusually partway through the plot of that house, very large plot of that house. When we look at what that site's doing at the moment, it's doing nothing for the local area, and what would be better. I think it's been agreed that it's not policy compliant to be using it for housing, but care homes are different. We often do see care homes being built at really quite significant distances from local facilities. This proposal is actually unusually close to the local facilities, well served by public transport, so it's relatively easy for visitors and, most importantly, workers to get to it. So in terms of the sustainability of this location for a care home of this size, this is actually much better than other applications that we've been seeing. Like many of other members around the table, I too have spent quite a lot of my time looking at and visiting care homes, and I would very much endorse the view that many of our existing care homes are woefully lacking in the facilities that we would like for ourselves or for our parents if they were to have to go to live there. There are many care homes that really do not have en suites, that do not have balconies, that have very awkward winding corridors and uneven staircases that limit their residents from getting around even within the care home, let alone outside. And realistically, it's true that by the time you're in a dementia care home, the chances are you're not very likely to be going into the local village or the town on your own, unaccompanied. So that distance is not really relevant in terms of unaided walking to get there. It obviously is in conflict with the aspects of our plan and of the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan, and that's very important. I'd like the officers to clarify again the issue that was raised by the Southwater Parish about compliance with the tree policy. But it's been looked at, and it does meet the biodiversity net gain requirements. It's difficult to believe that there'd be further backland development there once you've put in sustainable drainage pond, because that would, trying to build at the back wouldn't really work. So although I understand that why people might be concerned about that, once you've planted those trees, which will have a condition on them, and you've got a drainage pond in there, the site is actually in effect fully developed, and the boundary to the north is about as defensible as boundaries can get. So I think it's an interesting and difficult decision, because it is in conflict with some of the policies, but we're considering it under the tilted balance. And to me, it seems that it does offer some genuine advantage to the community in terms of providing improved quality of provision for the older generation, and bringing a derelict site into use.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just looking at some pictures of Worthing Road on Google Maps, and the vast majority of houses on Worthing Road appear to be two-storey. There are a few chalet sort of bungalows with some dormer windows on a couple of properties, but am I right in thinking this property is 3 stories? Because that would seem significantly larger than the other properties on Worthing Road, and the scale and mass and character of it. I wonder whether we could view that in context with the street scene and existing character, because I guess to me it looks overpowering, oversight, not necessarily suitable in that location. But I'm happy to listen to the officer's viewpoint as to the ridge height and the massing of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll just come back to the officers. They've got a couple of things to clear up.
So firstly, in relation to the trees, the new floor space on this site would require 100 new trees, and the site is actually providing 106. And the landscaping would be subject to a planning condition to secure those details, placement of those trees, species of those trees, and size. So as officers, we feel that part of the policy is complied with as part of the proposal. In relation to the height, as you can see here, yes, it is a 3-storey building, but the second floor is actually within the roof space. There are 2-storey buildings along Worthing Road. There's chalets and bungalows. It is a complete mixture of buildings. And the ridge height of this proposal is 2 metres higher than the original property on the site. However, there is a significant gap between this new building and the neighbouring property, which is Pine Lodge, that sits just to the south. And the overall design and placement of the building within the site can accommodate that extra height, and also noting the fact that the 3rd storey is within what appears to be a roof space, so a sloping roof, so it's you wouldn't have 3 storeys and then a roof on top of it. So it diminishes the overall height and appearance and massing of that building.
Nobody else? Councillor Landy.
Thank you, Chair. Like my colleagues, Councillor Vickers and Newtown, and I think Councillor Blackburn, I doubt whether we actually do have a need for this nursing home, bearing in mind that we're still waiting for 2 others to be built. Private nursing homes are basically run for profit, and which means that the people that can go into these homes have to be reasonably well off. What we really do need is something for what our Prime Minister now calls working people. I think that's where the need really is, for profit. And one question about water neutrality and the borehole. Are we absolutely certain that this will not affect the aquifer? Where would the water be coming from?
Thank you. In relation to the borehole, it wouldn't be functionally linked to the Horsham borehole. So it is a separate, the Horsham aquifer, so it is a secondary aquifer, and there's no functional link there or danger of depleting the water source at Horsham. And our environmental health team are satisfied that the additional filtration needed can be accommodated and can achieve a potable water standard.
So we have reasonable underground maps of where all this water is?
Yes. Yes, so as part of the submission, the documents that have been provided include a hydrogeological survey of groundwater and underlying geology, thank you. So it provides a clear indication of where the aquifers are and where the water is, and which parts of it may or may not be functionally linked, and we don't have, this one isn't functionally linked to the Horsham water supply zone.
And finally, I think if this was coming to us and we had a 5-year land supply, I don't think we'd be approving this, because the site was already dismissed by an inspector, I think twice.
Just to be clear, councillors, this is a care home use, which is a C2 use. So previous proposals on the site have been for C3 residential. It's different policy context. And as we've said, our emerging local plan allows care home C2 uses outside of built-up area boundaries. That's not our current policy framework, but it's where we're transitioning to as part of that process. In terms of the need, obviously there may be a couple of care homes that we've permitted that haven't been built yet. Our need is 1,517 spaces up into 2039. This provides 70. So our need is significant. So I think it's in my view, it's very difficult to substantiate a reason for refusal that a couple of care homes have not been built yet, when our need is so substantial, and that's obviously set out in our documents that's informed on our emerging local plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman, please.
Thank you. Could I just raise an issue of flooding? Under the previous application, DC 231350, it was identified that there was a medium to high risk of water surface flow to the northern boundary of the properties, and that they had requested that a sequential test be carried out. Do we know whether the sequential test has been carried out and whether the officers are comfortable that there is no flood risk?
Okay. The previous application encompassed the whole site, and there was another medium to high risk flow path through the site. This flood risk area is a drainage ditch, and then we are comfortable that drainage ditches perform as they're supposed to. So flood water goes into them and carries it away. The drainage ditch lies outside of the red line boundary. A flood risk assessment has been provided and assessed by the local lead flood authority, and they are satisfied with the details and the water runoff rates and all of the other details that are provided within that technical report. And they're satisfied with that. We've got a number of conditions to address those particular aspects. So in short, this application does not require a sequential test to be submitted, so it's different to the previous application.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. My question's around policies 4 and policy 26, which are the strategic policy settlement expansion and countryside protection. If we go on this, you mentioned about policy 18, which allows specialist care housing to be located outside defined settlement boundaries. If we take these policies as a whole, rather than individually, does that not suggest then, under policies 4 and policies 26, we should be considering whether this is permissible or not, rather than taking policies as single items? So if we took policy 18 on its own, yet we can argue that, or we can put forward a position that says, yes, it should be allowed because it's outside the built-up area. But if we look at policies collectively, there's policies in 4 and 26, which do not strictly accord with those. This development doesn't strictly accord with those policies. Thank you.
Okay, so policy 4 is out of date because it refers to the housing provision in the district, so that's out of date by virtue of the Horsham district planning framework being more than 5 years old. And I think when you mentioned the housing policies as a whole, that's the whole of the national planning policy framework.
I meant our own policies
Our own
taken as a
policies.
whole. We're often here, we should take our policies as a whole rather than individually.
Sure.
If we take policy 18 on its own, yep, it's outside the built-up area, yet it meets this, etc. But if we take our policies as a collective, then is there does that conflict with that policy 18?
I think I think our view is it generally complies with the HDPF as a whole, taking into account the fact that some of our policies are now out of date or carry less weight because we've not got a 5-year housing land supply. Obviously, there is a conflict with the South Water Neighbourhood Plan and their policy because that's more up to date than the current local plan. But we consider there are particular material considerations here which warrant approval, which are detailed in the report. So I think you have to also think about those other material considerations as well as your development plan policy. So I think our view is considering that as a whole and recognising the conflict with that neighbourhood plan policy, we still consider that the proposal is acceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've listened to everything that everybody's said. Thank you for your contributions. This is really difficult because on the one hand, there is a perception out there that we need more care home facilities, and I'm not disputing the assessment that's been done or the fact that we've got an ageing population, excuse me, which will require people to go into care homes and they want to be near where their families and their friends are. On that one hand, we've got to balance that with the policies that we have to protect our environment. Our countryside is disappearing under concrete all over the place, and Southwater itself has had more than its fair share of development in recent years and is still taking a lot of development. It is an ongoing situation. The entrance to Southwater is really important. When you come off the Hoppost roundabout, there is a derelict house there. It's fairly small, it's fairly modest in comparison to this proposal. This will be significant, and I have real serious concerns about the access onto that roundabout. And the traffic speed there, the limit is 40 miles an hour. If we're going to approve this, I would ask that the council asks West Sussex to review that speed limit, because I think it's quite significant that entrance and exit from that onto that road so close to the roundabout with so much traffic will be an issue. And I'm also concerned about the crossing to the bus stop. So I have a dilemma here, because on the one hand I can see why the officers are recommending it for approval, but on the other hand it conflicts with the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan and it conflicts with the policies in the HDPF. So I'm minded not to support the officer's recommendation and would refuse it based on the fact that it conflicts with those policies and has a significant impact on the landscape. I don't know whether anybody would be prepared to second that proposal.
I take it that's a motion?
Yes, sorry, I confirm I'll second that, yes.
So the motion is to refuse the application. On the grounds
Can I just clarify, Councillor Fletcher, that it conflicts because it's outside of the area boundary? So you mentioned before about landscape and things like that, but is your proposed motion that it conflicts with policies 4 and 26 and the relevant policy in the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan because it's outside of the built area boundary? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if I can just clarify that then. The motion is to refuse the application on the grounds of...
It conflicts with policy 4 and 26 of the Horsham District Planning Framework and policies 11.1 of the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan due to the fact that it's outside of the built area boundary.
Okay, everybody get that? So those in favour, please. Now those against? So,
Okay, so we had 5 voting for and 10 against.
so the motion has failed. So now we need to vote on the substantive motion, which is to approve the application with full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and subject to the completion of the necessary Section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as is agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. Yes, please do.
Thank you. In terms of that is, just for my own knowledge, so what, within that proposal, what protection, what guarantee is there that those trees that are proposed and have been spoken about will be, is there a guarantee that they'll be planted?
So there is a landscaping requirement that needs to be approved and signed off, which involves 106 trees being planted. That is a condition. That's a condition, correct?
And for further clarification, what happens if they are not planted?
Councillor Frank, condition 14 requires the landscaping to be submitted. It doesn't specify the exact number in the condition, so if members wanted some further safety, that is an amendment you could add. That should be no less than 100 trees is required, isn't it?
Could I make that a proposal, an amendment?
And then just quickly, in terms of your second point, obviously if the condition's not complied with, that becomes a breach of condition and relevant enforcement action can be taken if that was the case.
May I make that a proposal as a condition? Is that all right?
Seconded, yeah, please do. So we're going to move to the vote then. So to approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions and subject to the completion of necessary Section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly, and including the amendment that a minimum of 106 trees will be planted as part of the landscaping condition. So all those in favour, please.
Okay, thank you.
Against? Any abstentions?
Okay, so it was 10 votes for, 5 against, no abstentions. Therefore, approval has been granted with an amendment to the tree condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now then, fun and games in the town next. Thanks. Alrighty. Oh. Yes, if you grab a drink if you want one. We'll just work around you then, Nick. Item 7, please, DC 240553. Presentation, please.
Thank you. So before I start, an additional condition is recommended requiring the submission of a waste management plan to be submitted for approval prior to occupation of the development. This is in line with the requirements outlined in paragraph 6.46 of the report. The application relates to the facility at Horsham Leisure Park, also known as the Rec, which is a detached building located to the south of Horsham Park, highlighted here in red. The building is currently used for a roller skating ring, with the lower ground floor used as a live music venue. The building is owned by the council, who also own the adjacent car park, shown here highlighted in blue. The site is north of properties at London Road and Madeira Avenue. London Road is within London Road Conservation Area and includes listed buildings. This is a photograph of the front of the building. It's modern in design, built in the 1970s. 70s, the building is on 2 floors and includes a raised entrance above a lower ground floor level. This shows the current lower ground floor layout, which mostly comprises function rooms, boiling room and changing rooms. This is the upper ground floor layout, which where the main access is, and this floor is mainly used for the skating ring area, which you can see here. So this shows the existing and front elevations, and this shows the side elevations, and you can see the north elevation here includes a balcony overlooking the park. Turning to the proposal, the scheme is for the change of use of the building into a new leisure facility comprising a 10-pin bowling alley over 2 floors with seating areas, karaoke rooms, escape rooms, games area and a reception. The proposal also includes a new entrance to replace the existing entrance at the upper ground floor level. This plan shows proposed layout of the lower ground floor with the bowling alley in place. And here we see the upper floor with a bowling alley, another bowling alley, and this floor also includes a games area and a karaoke room. So we see the proposed rear, north and south elevations. There are minimal changes proposed here, but the top elevation does show a new covering over the balcony which faces north. You'll see the proposed front elevation. As said, the scheme is proposed to demolish the existing entrance and construct a new entrance. It should be noticed that the signs shown here are not part of this application, as they are being considered under a separate advertisement consent application and are not for consideration today. This shows the proposed entrance in detail. You can see that it's a glazed entrance set within the existing features of the building. Overall, the changes to the appearance of the building are considered minimal and acceptable. In terms of other considerations, the proposal is considered water neutral, given that the proposed use can be considered comparable to the existing use of the building as a skating ring with similar hours of operation proposed. There are also no highway concerns raised for this application, given its sustainable town centre position and its proximity parking. The main consideration for this application relates to the potential for noise and immediate impacts on adjacent properties. The concerns of residents in the parish have been duly noted. As outlined in the reports, proposed use is comparable to the existing leisure use of the building. In addition, the proposed hours of use will be comparable to the existing open hours permitted for the skating ring. Proposed hours also match those approved under a licence application as agreed by Sussex Police. Conditions are recommended limiting the hours of use to generally those to match those put forward in the licence. The only deviation is not to allow the proposal to allow extended hours for specific events such as Halloween and Valentine's Day, as this is not considered appropriate. In addition, additional conditions are recommended requiring a noise management plan and limiting the hours of opening of the balcony. With these conditions in place and taking into account the existing use and opening hours of the premises, the proposal is considered acceptable in terms of its amenity impact. The proposal would also allow the continued use of the facility to provide leisure facilities for the town. Permission is therefore recommended in accordance with the conditions set out in the report, with a conditional condition requiring the submission of a waste management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We have 3 speakers. Bill Power, you're up first, please. 2 minutes, please, Bill. Sorry, Bill, can you just turn the mic on there? Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Bill Power and I live on Madeira Avenue. Anybody who's driven here tonight has driven down my road. I'm saying that we're not objecting to the development of it, but some of the proposals we object to. There was a proposal for it open until 1:30. This will increase the amount of antisocial behaviour the residents have to put up with. As part of the planning application, it seeks that there are no restrictions on the number of people that are allowed on the premises. With the amount they're looking at packing into the space in excess of 500 people, this will have a massive impact on the residents when they arrive and leave the premises. It's no good having signs saying, please keep quiet and respect our neighbours, as nobody takes any notice of these. In the past, it's been said that once they are off our premises, they are not our responsibility. We have past experience of revellers using our streets as a toilet and fighting. This type of attitude is exactly why we're objecting to the late night licence. On the plans, I can see no designation for people who are smoking or vape. This will be an open area where people will stand and make noise, again disturbing the residents. The consultation actually says there is a concern regarding the longer opening hours regarding antisocial behaviour within the park. The adjacent areas to the venues suffer these issues when the venue was a nightclub. These issues need to be carefully addressed, and I cannot see how this has been covered off. The HDNC agrees with the concerns raised by the residents of Madeira Avenue and the police regarding the problems arising from inconsiderate parking, light pollution from the unlimited signs, and the late opening hours, noise disturbance, and antisocial behaviour. I can see no mitigation that these issues have been addressed, so I object to the plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. John Sullivan, please.
Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking because we are very concerned that this planning application is being recommended for approval without due concern for the nearby residents. My first concern is the outdoor terrace for eating and drinking. The time restriction on this states 9 AM to 9 PM. I question how this will be managed. What's to stop people wandering out of the bar onto the terrace at all hours? The terrace will create a lot of noise, not only from the people on the terrace, but also from within the building. Because as we see from point 632 of the Planning Committee report, the noise from within the building is only being contained by, and I quote, doors to be kept shut. I don't know how this will work, who will monitor it. Doors will obviously be continually being opened and shut and left open, I expect, throughout the evening. How will we be able to live in peace with the noise of loud music from within the building, plus people sitting on the terrace just a few yards from our home and gardens? It really is unfair to allow this level of noise. The opening hours being extended to 1:30 AM, as Bill has already mentioned, is a cause of grave concern. We now live in times where police numbers, as we realise, are so limited that it is a pointless exercise calling them to deal with the antisocial behaviour of the people leaving the premises. As has already been mentioned, we've seen fighting, shouting, urinating against our front garden walls. And this will happen. I'm not guessing as to whether it will happen. I know it will, because it happened 3 nights a week when the building housed the previous nightclub. And of course, those who own this new facility are interested in selling alcohol to their members and customers, and that of course fuels the bad behaviour. I have been to many planning meetings for this building's change of ownership and use over the years. Promises are made by the owners, rarely kept, and the management and staff are usually too busy keeping the peace inside the building to care about noise and nuisance outside. So I don't hold up any hope for a peaceful, quiet life when this new venue opens, if you allow it to.
Thanks, John. Right. Trudy Mitchell from Den Neighbourhood Council, please. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to largely echo the views of the residents. Nobody doubts that in its current condition, the wreck is a wreck. We have no objection to its change of use and upgrading the premises, but we do have strong objections to the effect this will have on the surrounding residential properties and the park. Our initial response to the planning application pointed out some errors and omissions in essential information. This was partly rectified by additional plans, and now the proposed conditions in the case officer's report go a long way towards resolving some problems. However, there is still information missing, and we have concerns about antisocial behaviour, opening hours, noise and light pollution. I am sure everyone is aware of the recent stabbing incidents in the park, and there is history of late-night antisocial behaviour in the nearby Human Nature Garden. Previously, the wreck had also attracted antisocial behaviour. Therefore, we were disappointed that hours for the premises licence have already been agreed, and believe that the suggested hours of use, as in item 630 in the report, are likely to cause more disturbances in the area. However, we welcomed the proposed preoccupation condition 5, which requires a noise management plan and stringent security arrangements. In addition, regulatory condition 8 proposes restricted hours for the use of the balcony, but it omits reference to the need, which is stated in the report item 632, for the doors to be kept shut to avoid noise spreading outside the building. Surely an automatic door closing system could be required by condition. I don't know if all the councillors are familiar with the building or realise that references to the ground floor and upper ground floor are somewhat misleading. Regrettably, there is still no drawing comparable to the rear side and side elevations shown tonight that show the front of the building and its entrance. In fact, access is raised considerably above car park level and goes into the upper ground floor. The plan for the ramp and entrance indicate a staircase, but give no information about the substantial height of the existing grass bank, which includes some planting. We ask for a condition that a landscape plan should be submitted for this area. The ground floor is actually semi-basement, which is relevant to the changing rooms and bin storage. We note bin storage is now included on the plan, but this seems to be at the lower ground floor level, so we ask for information regarding how access and collection will be achieved. The existing lower ground floor plan shows 7 individual changing rooms at the north side of the building. These are accessed by a staircase going down from the car park and along an external corridor below ground level. As far as we are aware, although in very poor condition, these changing rooms were maintained for public use by HDC. The proposed ground floor plan shows a solid wall with a single fire exit onto the corridor, thus incorporating the changing rooms into the building. If this is the case, we ask that there should be a security system to only allow emergency access to the staircase to car park level. It is important to say that residents are very concerned about light from the building intruding into their bedrooms up to 1:30 in the morning. Although it is not part of this application, light pollution will be exacerbated by the cumulative effect of 5 illuminated advertising signs, each over 3 metres wide, if the separate application is approved. We ask that if the committee is minded to approve the application, it should be subject to prior provision of information and the addition of extra conditions. To recap, we ask that there should be a proper elevation plan showing the entrance and front facade, a landscape plan for the grass bank below the entrance, and clarification regarding the changing room area and bin storage, and also a regulatory condition to ensure closure of the balcony doors and external staircase. Thank you.
Thank you, Trudy. Yes, over to you, please.
So in terms of the smoking area, if you look at the red edge, it's very limited to around the building, with the blue edge for the car park. So we can only really condition what's in within the red edge of the plan. So you've got the outside balcony, but they haven't indicated that that's to be used as a smoking area. So it wouldn't be appropriate for us to require that. So unfortunately, we can't require a smoking area because we're very limited here. We don't have any outside areas shown within the red area. So with the permitted hours, they're very, as I said, they're very similar to what the existing hours are. So if you look at 6.25 on page 67, that's the existing lawful use and permitted opening hours, 10 to 12 Sunday to Wednesday, and 10 to 2:30 Thursday to Saturday. And then if you look at what they're proposing, which is on 6.30, this doesn't include the occasional days that they were going for. So it's 0800 to 12:30 Sunday to Wednesday and bank holidays, and 0800 to 1:30 Thursday to Saturday, and then this one-off for 0800 to 4 a.m. on New Year's Eve. So you can see that there is a reduction there from Thursday to Saturday, from 2:30 to 1:30, and an increase on Sunday to Wednesday to from 12 midnight to 12:30. So in one respect, they're raising it from half an hour Sunday to Wednesday, but then they're lowering it on the Thursday to Saturday. So that could be seen as a benefit. But either way, it's very comparable. As I said, with the signs, they're not part of this application. They are part of a separate application for advertisement consent. So that's not something we're looking at today. And in terms of the ramp, there are no proposals to change that. That has to be as existing, which allows the access to the site. So that's not a part of this application to be changed. Okay.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Fletcher, would you like to open or?
Thank you very much. The rec's been a really important part of many people's lives over the years in Horsham. It's gone through quite a few different guises in its lifetime. It's most recently been used on a temporary basis by the roller skating rink, who've actually made a very good go of that, and it's been a pleasure to have them here in town, and I wish them well as their tenure ends, their temporary tenure ends, and they seek a new home. And it will be good to see this building being brought back into full use, because the last couple of uses have been really smaller uses than the space was able to cope with. And it's good to see that it's being developed by a large national company that we believe has the wherewithal to make a good job of doing this and provide the various different activities and keep them up to snuff, so that it can be a good venue for people to come in. I think I have a great deal of sympathy with resident concerns about the noise and the antisocial behaviour, because that's is definitely an issue when you have a venue like this in quite close proximity to residential areas. So I was concerned about extending of the opening hours, and I'm pleased to see that on the Thursday to Saturday period that the hours are actually less than the current hours, those being the busiest days that they're going to have. There is a requirement for a noise management condition on there, a noise management plan, and that obviously needs to be a very well thought out and robustly considered plan in order to minimise the problems for the residents there. I note the concerns about the balcony, having a clear condition to ensure that the balcony is not continuously used in the later part of the evening does seem to be an important thing to do. So I'd be happy to support any suitable strengthening of that condition. And I think the point raised about the staircase is also worth us taking into consideration, because it's a rather sort of dark, pokey trip down underground there, and there's no sort of particular need for anybody to be there, except when they're using the staircase as an access. So I think in terms of social safety, it would be a good thing to, if we could ensure that we've got some appropriate treatment of that as part of the conditioning as well. The lighting issues are not relevant, because that's down to the signage application, which I hope will take that into consideration. I was going to say I'm not that impressed by the indicative branding there. It doesn't look particularly wonderful, but on the other hand, it's going to be a job to make this building look worse than it currently does. It's never been one of our prettiest buildings in the town. But as I say, hopefully that'll be considered properly in the lighting signage application. The ramp is a very prominent feature at the front of this building. I think, like the general aesthetics of the building, it's something that probably hasn't stood the test of time very well aesthetically. Nonetheless, that's there, and that's the way that you get in and out of the building. And I would again support that the landscaping for the ramp being included in the conditions for this building. It has over recent years been allowed to run amok, and I think it's important that the new owner takes full responsibility for making it an attractive feature at the front of the building. I think that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fletcher. Would anybody else like to say? Councillor Livingston.
All right. I must admit, when I looked at this application, I shuddered. I owe my living as a professional chartered fire engineer, working on some of the largest projects in Europe. Now, I've watched many videos over the years of nightclubs where there's been insufficient exits, control of materials within the building, without the proper fire detection, suppression, and it's horrible. And here we are, not even having consulted West Sussex Fire and Rescue Service. Now, you know, I can go on about not all the possible requirements that will be here. We're making substantial changes to this building. Now, I think we need, before we approve this or turn it down, we need to understand that it's going to be suitable for the young people, mostly young people who will go here, consume a lot of alcohol and hopefully enjoy themselves, but come out safely and soundly at night. Now, under, as my colleagues just pointed out, the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, there is a clause, clause 45, of duty to consult the fire authority before planning approval. Now, I wish this to be referred to the compliance unit at West Sussex Fire and Rescue Service for a full investigation, so we know that this is going to be safe for young people of the district. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Livingston. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support my fellow councillor, Councillor Livingstone. We're all lucky here that we've got 2 fire consultants sitting around here, and I have to echo that there are some concerns. Obviously, whether that falls within the planning remit, that needs to be discussed, but as it stands and looking at the plans and as it currently stands, there is a duty to consult under the fire safety regulations, and it would be interesting to know if that consultation has been carried out and what were the findings before we proceed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
The difficulty here is obviously there is a crossover between planning requirements and building regulation requirements and other requirements under the Fire Safety Act. I'm not a fire expert, so you have to bear with me. And West Sussex County Council do not want to be consulted on every application, and they don't have the capacity to do so. Now, they haven't been consulted on this one. Whether they will be prepared to comment or not, I don't know. But I think we have to bear in mind, you know, that they can't comment on all types of applications. And obviously there is a duty for a fire risk assessment under the Planning Gateway 1, which was introduced, I think, 21-22, but that's only for buildings over 18 metres with 3 or more residential units. So I think I'm not able to give you clarity here, but I think I'm just concerned that we are potentially straying into other legislative requirements outside of planning. But if we are to properly review this matter, that maybe need to be under delegation. But I think going forward, we need to seek some clarity, because if we truly can consider these matters, that's absolutely fine. But I think we need to seek some clarity in terms of where this sits, because if this is indeed covered by other matters outside of planning, then we can't be adding requirements on planning which are covered by other legislation. Thank you.
Okay, this isn't a high-risk building as classified under the Building Safety Act at this present time, but this is a high-risk building with 1,200 plus young people inside. We don't know if there's adequate escape. We don't know if there's adequate. Yeah, there's only one lift. So if you've got a wheelchair user, it's not even protected by a lobby we would normally expect. There are so many things we could see here. Now, I think before we make up our mind, one way or another, we should insist that this goes to West Sussex. And if they turn it down, we should go and then appoint another fire consultant to review it.
Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Remembered my name, thank you. Would that not be an issue for once it's built and they have to get a licence to operate as a, whatever they want to operate here as a 10-pin bowling alley? Would that not be at that stage, not at the planning stage? I think I'm going to get an answer straight away from Councillor Grant.
Apologies, just for the avoidance of all doubt, of, taking into consideration, the emotiveness of it. But let's look at the legal part, and I'll ask our solicitor as well to keep her ears open. So clause 45 of the regulatory reform order says, where it is proposed to erect a building or to make any extension or structural alteration to a building, and in connection with the proposals, plans are, in accordance with building regulations, deposited with the local authority, the local authority must, subject to paragraph 3, consult the enforcing authority before passing those plans. So
that's at building reg stage, because I manage building regs as well. So I have come across that because I've dealt with it in another scenario. So that's not planning. That is a separate legislative process. So I think that's what I'm saying. We just need to bear in mind, planning can't replicate the requirements of other legislation. Thank you.
It would seem to me that we could have this, we could delegate something here so that there is a proper, inspection or whatever carried out. Because it is a change of use, but it is also a change of use in quite a significant way. And the 2 stories now are going to be being used rather than 1, and so one suspects that there are risks coming in now that haven't been there previously. So I think it is time perhaps to do something like that, to have it delegated for that to happen.
Just to clarify, Chairman, the same floors are being used and the uses are substantially the same, which is set out in one of the paragraphs in the report. Essentially, there's a couple of little bits like the karaoke and the escape rooms that are different, but the uses are substantially the same. Obviously, that members may still choose to delegate. That's your decision, but obviously the use as a leisure facility and the substantial uses and the hours will generally remain the same. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
just to wrap that up, okay, hear you. As long as our concerns are minuted and noted, so we'll leave it at that point, I think.
No, I think we have got to put a condition in that the final decision, we have some dedicated, some information back from the fire authority and some way of proving this is going to be a safe use for this building.
I've found a document on, you've been talking, from the RTPI, which talks about the role of planning in fire safety. And this is an assessment. It says planning does not have powers to assess the fire safety of building materials, nor most elements of building design. Fire precautions covered by building regulations are not part of material planning considerations on which planning decisions must be based. So it cites Grenfell, which said that although the LPA gave permission for the cladding, that decision was correctly made because their only involvement was about the aesthetics of it. And so apart from things like turning circles for fire engines and things like that, we actually have very limited locus here to intervene.
Councillor Ellis-Brown.
Completely different subject. Does it really need to be open until 1:30 in the morning on Thursday, Friday and Saturday evenings? That's what my question here. The other one is, have we considered the rights of the locals and their quiet enjoyment of their possessions? And therefore, under human rights, does that breach their human rights by having it open till 1:30 in the morning, when one could expect to enjoy my possessions quietly in the evening?
With regard to human rights, apart from your right to life, most of them are balanced decisions, and that's exactly what we're doing here. You don't have full right over your finances. They're subject to taxation. You don't have right to do whatever you like with land that you own because that's subject to planning legislation. So it's always a balancing act, and we do have legislation obviously in place to assist us with that and the management of it. It sounds to me as if some of the concerns that have been raised this evening are more germane actually to the purposes that are set out in the Licensing Act 2003. I'm just looking up I've got the statute open in front of me, and I'm just having a look now at the general duties of licensing authorities, because there are 4. There we go. The licensing objectives set out in section 4, the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. So I'm not suggesting that it's nothing to do with planning, but it's a marriage of planning, and the ongoing management will be a matter for the environmental health team here. And they have powers of review over licenses. They can also impose certain restrictions on premises licence, that windows stay closed, that there are sound lobbies and so forth. So it's not the end of the story once we are finished with this application, and neither is it all on planning to deliver a solution for this building that works for everybody's benefit.
Thank you.
Yes, I was to say that the hours of use are actually better for Thursday to Sunday if you compare them to what the existing lawful use is, which is open to 2:30 a.m. So there's an improvement there, down to 1:30 of an hour from the Thursday to Sunday. And this will also be a betterment of the fact that we're going to get a noise management plan to be put in place by a condition. And then you have to take into account that the uses are very similar. So that has to be a consideration for us. This isn't like a new nightclub use, which we're considering. It's a leisure use, which is very similar to one which they already have permission for. And then also, there's the hours match those that have already been considered in the licence. So there's quite a lot of considerations there which go in its favour in terms of the hours of use.
Anybody else want to make a comment? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fletcher.
When we've heard from everybody, I would suggest that proposing an amendment to delegate with a view to approval, to allow us to look at the detailed wording of conditions for use of the staircase, the balcony and the landscaping.
The door being sort of forced to close, is that something that we can have a condition for?
That was for the balcony, so I don't think it's appropriate for us to require what mechanism it should be closed by at this stage, but that we should have a suitable system that ensure it does get shut.
I would suggest the delegation is to review and amend those conditions as appropriate, and then that discussion can be had around what the exact wording could be to address those. Also, we just need to think about landscaping because it's outside of the red edge, so I think we can do that as part of any delegation, which I assume Councillor Fletcher would be in consultation with local members. Yeah.
Councillor Hobb.
Thank you, Chair. The opening hours, I appreciate this used to be a nightclub, it used to be a leisure venue. It has been open long hours to the early hours of the morning before, but they've requested 4 a.m. on New Year's Eve and a number of other dates. That does seem excessive to me. I must admit I'm not out myself to 4 a.m. on New Year's Eve. I don't know if anywhere else in town has got a licence that late or are allowed to open that late, but obviously we are here to protect local residents, and that would seem excessive to myself. I don't know how other people feel in the room, but I just wonder whether officers could clarify whether demand, need, reason, other premises are open that late in town, and perhaps why that is recommended for approval, because my initial impression would be that is excessive.
Well, again, it matches those in the licence that's been granted, and it is a one-off, so in that respect, it's considered appropriate just for that one and matches the licence. And so there is going to be disturbance, but it is just very limited for that one time. And so it goes. But we've, as I said, they did want these other extended hours on these special days like Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's Day, but we've decided that that's not appropriate because some of those days may fall during the week. So, but yes, we've decided. In our judgment, that one-off time for New Year's Day is appropriate, given that that's already been approved as part of the licence.
Chair, on the process. Apologies. I understood we had a proposal for an amendment. I haven't seen that seconded yet or taken through. Right.
Right, so we have a proposed, well, we have a recommendation from the officers. We have an amendment to that recommendation to address certain things. And we need a seconder. So everybody's clear?
Should I just say so my understanding, Councillor Fletcher, is your motion, your alternative motion is to be minded to approve, delegated to the head of development in consultation with local members, subject to further consideration and amendments to conditions relating to the staircase, balcony and landscaping. Thank you.
Okay, so we had 13 for, no one was against, and we had 2 abstentions. So therefore, it has been recommended for approval, subject to the conditions already mentioned.
Okay, thanks everybody. Please just settle down now. Item 8. DC 241125 in the ward of Southwater South and Shipley.
Sorry, could I just highlight that Chris Frank has left?
Thank you. Councillor Frank has left.
Thank you.
Okay, presentation please.
Thank you. This application relates to an existing haulage yard located west of Coolham Road. The haulage yard belongs to Prestige Package Solutions. Within the yard, Highview Scaffolding have an area they are using for the storage of scaffolding. This application is seeking to regularise that use. This shows the position of the storage area in the square there on the left-hand side, which is part of this application, used for scaffolding. Within the haulage yard, access through the site. You can see the access there from Coolham Road. So this shows the location of the scaffolding yard there, I've circled in red within the haulage yard site. The site is just north of the River Ada and commercial buildings to the site. The site is north of the village of Coolham in a countryside location. This photo shows a scaffolding storage yard with a roof over it, which I understand has now been removed. Prestige Packaging is to the east of the site outlined here. This is a separate use and not part of this proposal. Permission was granted for the use of the Prestige Packaging site in 2019. So here we see the storage area in question next to the existing haulage yard. As outlined in the report, whilst in a country location, the use broadly affects the uses on site and does not result in any further encroachment into the countryside, utilising an existing hardstanding. Should be noted that it has been established by the enforcement team that the hardstanding used here for the scaffolding storage is lawful and doesn't require planning permission in itself. This is due to its existence for more than 4 years. As outlined in the report, the proposal is anticipated to generate 8 domestic movements and 2 truck movements per day. County Highways are satisfied that the use would not result in an increase of vehicle movements, taking into account the use of the site by Prestige Packaging. It should be noted that under the permission for the haulage yard at Prestige Packaging, conditions are in place which limit the amount of lorries that can access the site at any one time. The scheme is also considered appropriate on all of the planning considerations and is recommended for approval subject to conditions. This includes the conditions limiting the hours of operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. We have 3 speakers. We start with Dawn Appleton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I personally visited this site in 2018 before the scaffolding use commenced, and it was a total eyesore covered in builders' materials, equipment, rubble and porter cabins. It seems that the land has been used for outside storage for these types of uses for many years, and as such a storage use is likely to be lawful by virtue of the passage of time. Highview Scaffolding started using a small part of this land in 2020, and since that time much of the builders' material and equipment has been cleared. The scaffolding use operates on an area a fraction of the size of the former storage use. The planning application has been submitted to regularise the scaffolding use at the request of the local planning authority, and this process enables you to impose conditions to manage the use. This level of control would not be available should the applicant follow the lawfulness route. Highview Scaffolding is a small family-run business with 3.5 tonne trucks operating from this site. The vehicle movements to and from the site are mainly at the beginning and end of the day, as the company aims to have as much scaffolding out on site as they can and move it from job to job as much as possible, as this is the most cost-effective way to run the business. Wherever the company is based, it will be using the local road network, as the nature of the business is to travel to sites to serve the residents and businesses in the area and support the local construction industry. It's noted that the Highway Authority does not object to the application on highway safety grounds. The aim of the economic policies of the local plan is to support business to create local job opportunities and promote general economic growth. In the absence of any identified harm that would outweigh the economic benefits, I ask you to agree your officer's recommendation, support the application and enable this local business to continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Councillor Alex Jeffrey. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of concerns with this application I wish to bring to the attention of the committee. Back in 2019, Prestige Distribution got planning permission to operate from Bridge Farm with the added condition that no subletting to other commercial businesses would occur. This application is retrospective, with planning permission only being sought after a compliance investigation on the site. The element of the site in question today, an area of hard standing, was not included on the site map as part of that condition. This is because in 2019 this hard standing did not exist, with this area of land being undeveloped at the time permission was granted. The applicant advises that this hard standing was laid in early 2020, a year after permission was granted and conditions agreed. I question the lawfulness of the hard standing that has expanded the site. The hard standing area was poured without planning permission being obtained at the time, with a compliance case opened in which it was deemed that planning permission for the hard standing was not necessary. I harbour both concern and confusion over this stance, as having consulted those with greater knowledge on concrete pours than I, they estimate that the hard standing would have taken approximately 250 tonnes of poured concrete to create. Not a small pour by any means, particularly when you consider that small groundworks projects, such as the creation of single vehicle parking spaces in residential areas, require a planning application to be submitted. It gives me further food for thought when the committee report states under section 6.7 that the expansion of the site was the addition of the hard standing is seemingly lawful, which would suggest to me that we are not completely confident in its status ourselves as the principal planning authority. I question how we can consider approving an application when we are undecided on whether the key element of said application is actually lawful or not. What does this actually mean? Is this not grounds for at least a deferral to ensure that what is in front of the committee is actually lawful? Traffic management to and from the site is another highlight for concern, with the geographical location of the site resulting in the only direction of travel out of the site being down Coolham Road and through the centre of the village, with the road through the village unsuitable for large and frequent freight traffic, with many of the scaffolding vehicles already exceeding the 20 mile an hour zone limit, while also driving dangerously, as has been evidenced by footage sent in by residents, which contradicts section 6.14 of the committee report, which states there is no evidence to suggest that existing access point has been operating unsafely and that the proposal would exacerbate an existing safety concern. With a school on this stretch of highway, I question the safety of residents and school children alike. With the increase in commercial traffic along an unsuitable road this will bring as a result of the commercialisation of the countryside, which contradicts Policy 10 of the Horsham District Planning Framework, which clearly states that development in the countryside must contribute to the diverse and sustainable farming enterprises within the district, or, in the case of other countryside-based enterprises and activities, contribute to the wider rural economy. I fail to see how the proposed application delivers on any of the criteria set out in this policy should countryside development take place. The proposal, I believe, also contravenes Policy 33 of the Horsham District Planning Framework, which states permission will be granted for development that does not cause unacceptable harm to the amenity of the occupiers or users of nearby properties and land. I argue that this application will result in significant harm to the local residents of Coolham, in which the centre of the village will be consistently swamped with commercial vehicles, with the current volume of commercial traffic causing significant concern for residents, never mind increasing this further. I also wish to raise concerns around the recommended conditions should members be minded to grant planning permission here tonight. The two conditions that stand out for me refer to the fact that the use of the hard standing will be for scaffolding storage only, the other that the hours of operation will be between 7 AM and 4:30 PM. I am concerned that we will be unable to enforce these conditions, as has been the case that similar conditions on the site are already not being adhered to, with an ongoing enforcement case open for the continued breach of existing conditions following the refusal of previous applications on site. How can residents be reassured that if members grant permission tonight, that these conditions will be enforceable, when existing conditions are already being disregarded by the site operator? As you can imagine, this does not fill residents with confidence that these conditions would be enforceable, with I myself sceptical that anything but a further breach of any conditions would ensue due to the lack of consequences to current persistent breaches. I hope members will take this information and concerns into consideration when making a decision here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jeffrey. Shipley PC, Councillor Matthew Payne, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. I want this evening to highlight the context of approving yet another application that involves commercial lorries and trucks driving through the hamlet of Coolham. Since I've lived in the parish, decisions taken have seen the slow industrialisation of the immediate vicinity of Coolham, perhaps a 2-mile radius of the crossroads, particularly to the north on the way to Barnes Green, where this site is located. For those of you that don't know Coolham, it's a secondary settlement of 106 properties, mainly clustered around the crossroads, many of which are road fronted, some right on the pavement. The road going through the village is an old, uneven, bumpy road that has shallow foundations, and in the 20 years I've lived in the parish has never been resurfaced. Lorries and trucks shake the houses in their foundations. I've had dozens of complaints about commercial vehicles waking people up between 3 and 6 a.m. in the morning. The vibration and hissing air brakes a racket in the quiet night. West Sussex Appeal wants its cake and eat it. It claims that the road in Coolham is a small B road for local traffic and therefore doesn't warrant a resurface, yet at the same time its consultations on flawed tricks data say that there'll be no severe cumulative impacts on the operation of the highway network, which appears to be the stock answer on hundreds of consultations I've read. I haven't yet seen one where tricks say the impact could be severe, which is the test under the MPPF. It is a road designed for local car traffic, and the section of road from the school to the crossroads on the relevant northern approach is less than 6 metres wide and is occupied by parked cars on one side. It is a pinch point. It is tight for a car to get through, and trucks and HGVs have to squeeze through. It's not uncommon for cars to be shunted with a bumper. I've personally spoken to nearly every resident on Brooks Green Road in getting the speed limit reduced to 20 miles an hour, and nearly all have had stories to tell of damaged cars. It was only 2 weeks ago that the head of William Penn Primary School had to call police when an HGV destroyed the side of a parked parent's car when it was trying to get past. It was a dangerous spot for residents, parents and school children. HDC over the years have approved so many commercial sites to the north of Coolham that I believe that a severe cumulative effect has already taken place to the highway, and consenting to just another few more trucks is certainly not okay to local residents. No one appears to be keeping tally of the increase in commercial traffic they have already permitted, and every application that comes before the council uses the same wording: that in isolation this site conforms to policy 40, it's safe, the roads can cope, it should be approved. So let me remind members what HDC have already approved, and I quote verified traffic movements from planning statements. Kingswood Egg Factory, 396 commercial movements a day. Total Butler Gas Site, Leach Autos and St John's Farm wood chip business, a combined 100 movements a day. In more recent years, the council have approved Prestige in the site that we're talking about, with 13 lorries approved. However, residents' video footage show that there's at least 28 vehicles, which is 146 movements a day. Bailey Storage Business, another 62 movements. The Waterstream Swimming Pool site on Brooks Green Road, 36. The conversion of part of the Kingswood Egg Factory into a light industrial park, another 240 net movements a day. There's another application currently being considered, DC 241273, which will be another 90 additional movements for a furniture storage business that is already in situ. And then there's the unlawful operators in the villages who haven't got around to asking for planning permission, like a motor services business that's just appeared in Brooks Green. It appears to be a developing trend to start a business and then ask for planning permission 3 or 4 years later. So we have a baseline of about 500 commercial movements a day historically through Coolham, and in the last 4 years the council have approved an additional 580 daily movements, and are about to approve another 90 at Orchard Business Park. So that's a 134% increase in commercial movements in 4 years. Another 10 here that we know to be really more than 10 does actually make a big difference. That will be over 1,200 commercial movements through Coolham every day, a large proportion of which are HGVs. This severe cumulative watershed was reached a long time ago, hence why residents have finally had enough of the prospect of yet more commercial traffic through the village. These sites should be in a business park and not in green fields in a tiny hamlet. One other details, the applicant also references 3 3.5 tonne Iveco trucks, but they are not the only vehicles on site. Highview have at least one 7.5 tonne HGV seen regularly in the village, and their Facebook page showcases at least half a dozen other vehicles that are based at Bridge Farm. I also dispute several points referenced in the officer's report. Paragraph 6.11, the use would not result in additional vehicular movements on the site. I fail to see how an applicant can use their unlawful activity over the last 4 years to justify and use it as a selling point for gaining consent now. I also note there's no proposed regulatory conditions on limiting the site to the number of traffic movements and the number of vehicles. 6.14 states that the feedback from local residents on HGV traffic can be discounted as it relates to prestige lorries, but residents are fed up of increased volume of traffic full stop, and 3.5 tonne trucks still make a lot of noise and vibration as they rattle past your house. There is also at least one high-view HGV on site, as I've discussed. Point 6.21 finally.
That's 5 minutes, mate.
Providing consent would not result in an unacceptable harm to the local area, and no evidence suggests they've been operating safely. I disagree. I've sent a video to...
Thank you, Matthew. That's 5 minutes, mate.
Thank you.
Over to you again.
We could take these on board, and but you've got to understand this is just for this one area here shown in the which is quite a small area for the scaffolding storage yard, which doesn't result in excessive vehicle movements. But I understand you've got to take to so the issues may be with the existing commercial use of the site, but that's not part of this proposal. What we're looking here is just this one little area, which has been operating for some time, and then it already has an existing hard standing in place. So and it's part of the haulage yard. So the impact on the countryside is minimal, and then we have to take into account the comments from the highways who have not raised any objections, and then we've got we can put hours of use in place to limit the impact on residents. So taking all that into account, it's considered on balance to be acceptable.
Councillor Blackburn.
Can I, thank you, Chairman. Can I just clarify whether it is anticipated, in your view, that there will be any increase in traffic or business there at that place for that specific use, for regularising that specific use?
Well, in terms of traffic movements?
Yeah.
So yeah, they have 6.13, 6.14, that highlights what they've anticipated to generate 8 two-way domestic movements and 6 two-way truck movements per day. So that's been taken into consideration by the county highways and is considered acceptable.
Is that in addition to what's already happening?
So this is to regularise the existing use. So that's
what's already, that's existing.
In addition to the
movements.
haulage yard, yes.
In addition to
But this
the
is what
haulage
they're currently operating as they submitted.
Okay, so there's no anticipation of an increase in business there by doing this. I just want that really well clarified.
As set out there is, in terms of what's lawful, there is additional vehicle movements above what's lawful as set out in the relevant paragraph of the officer's report. Obviously, those vehicle movements are happening at present, but that's because there's a breach of planning control.
Yes.
And the business is operating without planning permission.
Yes.
Does that clarify, Councillor?
Yes, it does, but there's no additional, okay. Okay, so this application is literally just for that purpose, which I understand. But the reason we've had the chairman of Shipley Parish Council here making quite a passionate speech, and also Councillor Jeffrey, is because what is happening in Coolham is really inappropriate. Coolham Village is not an industrial estate, and yet because of a business at the same place as this applicant, that is what's happening there. It is extremely unsafe. There is a school there. Residents I know are parking on the road to try to slow down traffic and HGVs. Yeah, I just want to make that point, that site is definitely a problem for Coolham Village. Thank you.
Obviously, as my colleague said, we're just considering the red edge of this application site here and not the wider context of the site. I understand there are concerns and there's an ongoing enforcement investigation related to potential breaches of planning control there. Obviously, if there are identified breaches, we can consider whether or not we pursue enforcement action. That's not always simple or quick, but obviously there is an ongoing investigation, but that's outside of the framework of this current proposal we've got before you today. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mark? Mark.
Thank you. I'm just a little bit confused, and I hope you can clarify. The business that's there at the moment is there illegally in planning terms. They shouldn't be there. Is that correct?
It's not illegal to have a breach of planning control, but there is a breach of planning control. Yes, that's right.
But as far as planning is concerned, they shouldn't be there. Is that right?
It's a breach of planning control, so they don't have any permission to be on the
so
site for the use they're using it for at the
So
moment.
they shouldn't be there. Is that right?
That's
Can
not
I
quite how
assist?
planning works.
I think we use the term unlawful rather than
okay, yeah.
illegal, because
Okay,
it's not criminal until an enforcement notice is served and then you're in breach of that. So we tend to say it's unlawful.
Okay. Yeah. So in planning terms, the vehicle movements, should they be there now?
There is provisions within the Planning Act to submit a retrospective planning application. So there are, whether we like it or not, there are provisions where you can legitimately apply for retrospective planning permission, which is what we have before us.
Oh, yeah. But so my point is, even though it's retrospective, as far as we're concerned, the vehicle movements shouldn't be occurring. Well, we wouldn't expect them to be recurring from a planning point of view. Would that be reasonable to say?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Councillor Halliwell. Yeah, it's
Well,
a breach of planning
you're saying
control.
that there's no, if you like, no increase in movements. So it's not a consideration.
There are movements associated with this particular use as set out within the officer's report.
Yes.
So these are in addition to the lawful established use of the wider site.
So that means by granting this retrospective planning, we are officially increasing the number of movements. Is that right?
Yes, as set out, yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're happening now, but you're correct, yes.
Yeah. So we are by retrospective planning approval, we are putting a detrimental effect on the movements. We're actually authorising, if you like, the additional movements that we wouldn't expect to see there.
But that's a matter of planning judgment as to whether those additional movements are acceptable or not. Obviously, we've got a consultation response from the County Highways Authority raising no objections, but I recognise there is local concern as we've heard today.
Because the movements are already happening.
Yeah, so we're making them, we would be making these movements lawful.
Yeah. Don't seek permission, just get approval. Yeah.
Sorry if I've missed this, Chairman. A question. This unlawful activity has been in place for how long, and how long has the hard standing been there? And I think I heard you say there was no requirement for planning permission for that because it's been there long enough to become lawful.
Okay, so in the report it states the Highview Scaffolding started using this site for storage of scaffolding February 2020, and I believe it was about that time that the hard standing was in place as well. So the hard standing and the use have been in operation for more than 4 years.
But I think just to say it's important to recognise that now the government have changed it, but for those that uses and operations that were before the date, it was 4 and 10 years. So it's 4 years for operational development for hard surfacing, 10 years for a change of use. The government have changed that now to 10 and 10, but that's only kind of if you're starting the use now, 10 years forward. For stuff before that, it's still 4 and 10, if that makes sense.
That's why I was confused. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, we'll move to a vote. The Motion is to approve planning permission subject to appropriate conditions. It's all good. So all of those in favour? And against? Any abstentions?
So we had 8 voting for, 4 people voted against and 2 abstentions. Therefore, the application has been approved.
Alrighty, thank you. Item 9. EC 231806 Hawksbourne Wood, Rusper Road, Rusper, Horsham, West Sussex. Please do.
Okay, so since the committee report, a further objection from a nearby resident has been received on the grounds of inappropriate development in the countryside. This application relates to an area sited within woodland located to the east of Rusper Road, north of the Mowbray development site. This slide shows the location of the proposed site for the lodges in green, surrounded by the woodland. Some of the woodland is classed as ancient. So this shows the location of the proposal in detail with some trees within the site, and this shows the area with the hearth standing going through it. The track, sorry. So here we see the proposed site layout. The proposal is to install 6 eco-lodges within the clearing using the existing access from Rusper Road. This would involve the removal of some of the trees on site. This plan shows the layout in more detail with the proposed parking and landscaping. This shows the layout of one of the lodges with the decked area and the living area there. And here we see the proposed front elevation. The lodges will be clad in wooden panelling with cedar roofs. And here we see some artist impressions of the lodges. There's the front elevation with the decking, and there's another artist impression which shows the cedar roof. So as outlined in the report, with the benefits of a woodland management plan, no objections have been raised to the proposal from the council's tree officer, with limited to landscape harm. In terms of water neutrality, this would be achieved through the offsetting measures to a building at Hurst Court. These measures would need to be secured through a legal agreement. The scheme is also considered appropriate in terms of its ecological impacts, with no objections raised from the ecologist. The proposal is also considered appropriate in terms of its highway impact and would also support tourism in the district. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to completion of the legal agreement, secure the offsetting measures and the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Edward Peake, please. 2 minutes. Yes, press the button there.
Good evening, committee members and officers. I'm Edward, one of the business partners behind the proposal. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Our vision is to create a peaceful retreat where visitors can stay in eco-lodges, connect respectfully with nature and enhance our woodland. We're committed to sustainability, not only across the lodges themselves, but across every aspect of the project. This commitment includes designing each element to enrich the natural landscape and implementing a sustainable travel plan that encourages low-impact options for our guests. With our social media reach, we regularly connect with millions. We're excited to showcase the eco-lodges and promote Horsham's local businesses and attractions. The eco-lodges will create valuable jobs, supporting local employment during construction and providing stable, long-term roles once open. Horsham is our home, and we're eager to give back to the community. We are young, motivated, and have drawn on insights from specialists to make this project a lasting asset for the area. We want this project to be something Horsham will be proud of, aligning with local values and bringing lasting benefits to the community. Thank you for considering our proposal. We hope to bring this vision to life.
Thanks, Edward. David Archer, please.
Good evening. My name is David Archer. I am a principal consultant and director of Acadian Prospect Limited. We have been involved in providing arboricultural and ecological advice for this project from its very inception. A description of the existing site and the proposals for the new cabins are clearly set out in your Planning Case Officer's report. My comments relate to the ancient semi-natural woodland and any impacts that the proposals may make on it. I want to stress the point that no trees are required to be felled within that ancient woodland to enable this project to go ahead. There will also be no incursions by the proposal into the ancient woodland or the recommended 15-metre buffer zones. Thereby, this project fully complies with the guidance from Natural England and the Forestry Commission. This point is acknowledged by the consultees within the planning report. A comprehensive Forestry Commission approved woodland management plan has been drawn up for the entire ancient woodland, and if required by a suitably worded planning condition, would be a major benefit to the long-term health and vitality of this woodland for future generations. There are already existing access tracks to the site area, and it is proposed to merely renovate these within their existing footprints. The existing clearing within the wood, upon which the cabins are to be placed, consists of a very species-poor grassland. This will be significantly enhanced by the creation of new wildflower meadows throughout the site, as shown by the landscape strategy that forms part of the planning application. There will also be substantial additional new native tree planting in and around the cabins, creating additional buffer zones between the cabins and the woodland. This also complies with a direct recommendation from the Forestry Commission. Accordingly, I respectfully ask that planning consent be granted for this proposal. Thank you.
Great, thanks, David. And Andrew Goodall.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Andrew Goodall, and I'm fully in support of this application. Freddie is my son and Eddie's my nephew. Freddie was born in Horsham and has grown up here. As a family who've lived here for over 30 years, we have a love for the town and its continuing success. Over the last year, I've watched Freddie and Eddie put together the application and comprehensively address all the points that have been raised. I'm very proud of what they have put forward, and I believe this will be a tremendous addition to Horsham District. Staying at the 6 eco lodges will be a unique opportunity for guests to engage and connect directly with nature and experience all its well-being that it brings. I can't think of a more beautiful place to stay in sharing the woods with others. Like many of the younger generation, I've seen how they are far more aware and concerned about the environment than I was at their age. Sustainability is something that Freddie and Eddie are clearly passionate about, and this emerges throughout their application. The land has been used for storage of heavy plant and machinery for many years. What they are planning now is much more environmentally friendly and really complementary to the woods. With this application comes the proper management of the woods with all the significant benefits to its biodiversity and overall ecosystem. Freddie and Eddie have committed to fully fund these improvements from the income generated from their new business, putting something back into nature. The additional tourism is great for Horsham economy, bringing income to the town, boosting local businesses and creating new jobs. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Right, no comment there. Councillor Hodman, you're first up.
Thank you, Chair. I believe this is on the agenda because Rusper Parish Council had some objections, and if I would probably expect the Rusper Parish Council slightly disappointed that they've not chosen to speak tonight. So maybe I'll read their objections out on their behalf. The proposed site is an important environmental location made up of the Rusper, commented on made note of in the Rusper neighbourhood plan. It's a Rusper Ridge. It's an important biodiversity site, identified in the plan as a wildlife corridor that provides important connection for migration, breeding and hunting, a rich and wildlife area. The introduction of 24-hour human activity on the site, right in the middle of this important environmental, will have a significant impact. They also raised some comments around the water neutrality strategy. I guess that's, I personally pretty ambivalent. I mean, if we were looking to approve accommodation on this site, we wouldn't. It's in an unsustainable location outside the built-up area boundary. So this is similar to item 1 on the agenda, that if it was, we approved it because it was a nursing home and not nursing home, care home, and we had a lack of care home beds. I think in a similar way, we are shortage of, perhaps this is a question for officers, they can come back to on this one, make a note of this one. I believe we are short on hotel rooms in the district, and accommodation is at a shortfall. And this particular applicant is offering to build some environmentally friendly properties. So we have limited objections to the site. I think we have 3 objections, and we have an objection by the parish council. I'm minded to listen to other people's view on the debate, if there is a debate at all on this item, before making my personal decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite interested in this proposal because in Horsham District we are developing a character around nature recovery, which is very, very important. We have NEP here, we have Wheel to Waves coming through the district. At Horsham District Council, of course, we're partnered with Sussex Wildlife Trust on Wilder Horsham District. We are heavily involved in river recovery, and we do want to make sure that we are supporting anyone who is helping us with this aim to make sure that nature recovery happens. The Natural England's report came out recently. That was quite shocking reading. Last year, the RSPB State of Nature report similarly. And while we have a focus on climate action here, as many people do, without nature recovery, it's really not going to happen. So I have to say, minded to support something that keeps the character of the place, and not only that, but promotes it to visitors. I think that all adds up to a nice proposal for Horsham. And I have noted the ecology consultant comments, the landscape architect consultant comments, and the Forestry Commission and so on. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. There's just one area here that I wanted to check with officers. It's in the letters of representation, the summary, the bullet points. The bullet point, which is next to last, that this proposal is incompatible with existing neighbouring uses, shooting. Do officers have any further information about that? Because that could be very concerning.
I'm afraid I don't know the details of that, but you would expect in a countryside location there's going to be some shooting going on of pheasants, but it would be in a controlled environment, or deer, so you wouldn't have thought that would be of particular concern for this application. I'm not an expert on the shooting, I'm afraid.
Chairman, I'm sorry if I missed this. 6.56, currently used for storing heavy plant machinery. I'm slightly surprised the site is suitable for that, but And I support nature recovery, so I totally in support of that. But it does say in 6.58 there is some conflict with the local plan policies on sustainable travel, because obviously it's in a fairly remote location. So I just wonder what the officers' comment on both those are, please.
In terms of the former use, I think there was a forestry use on the site which would have been permitted development and a use you would have expected in the countryside. So, and I think that's why the existing track is there and was never removed and was obviously just lawful through the passage of time. Sustainability was something we considered in detail, and I did discuss with the applicant. I know they've got some quite good ideas in terms of ways in which they can encourage users to not use the private car. They weren't considered to be enforceable by condition, but I would encourage them to implement them. There is limited bus routes, but it is just literally just north of the North Horsham development, so it was considered to be in a relatively sustainable location, which is what, and plus the other benefits that you see before you in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've just got one question just to verify. How do we actually verify that the water efficient appliances are installed in Hurst Court?
So it is subject to the completion of a legal agreement because the offsetting measures are not within the site. So we have to have the legal agreement to make sure that the obligations will be in place to ensure that the measures are put in, and then also there is the conditions that they have to be in place prior to the occupation of the units. So there are conditions and measures within the Section 106 that would ensure that.
Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm interested in the issue of biodiversity net gain. I noticed that it's not a requirement because of the date on which the application was made, but I noticed the comments made that the intention is to put in place a new wildflower meadow and the planting of new natural plants. And there was also a comment that was made that the current level of species in there is not that great. Do officers have any information on any expectation of the improvement to biodiversity, even though it's not a legal requirement?
Well, yeah, they don't have to meet the current statutory regulations for BNG because it was submitted prior to the date, so that's not something we can consider. But if you look at the report, there is many biodiversity improvements and benefits of this application, which would definitely improve the ecology of the site and the area, and they're required by condition. So there are conditions requiring these.
Condition 6. So there was a preliminary ecology appraisal submitted. I don't have the details there in front of me, but it's on the public file. So we've just required details by condition 6 for the final details of that. And obviously we would consult our ecologist as part of that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Emery. Anybody else want to say anything? Right, well, let's put it to the vote. To approve full planning permission subject to appropriate conditions, subject to the completion of the necessary Section 106 agreement within 4 months of the decision of this committee, or such longer period as is agreed by the Director of Place acting reasonably and properly. So all of those in favour, please. And against? And abstain. Cool.
No way, that doesn't add up.
Oh.
You didn't vote. No, it still doesn't add up. No.
So just to confirm, it's 11-4, there weren't any people against and there were 2 abstentions, so the application's been approved.
Great, thanks very much. I don't believe there's anything else. So at 2017, the meeting is closed.